Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Today we are honored to present Sunflower Tears, a story of profound love, enduring hardship, and unexpected redemption. Please subscribe before we begin this journey. Now, let us listen. The scent of honeysuckle, usually a balm to Sarah's soul, felt like a cruel joke in the crisp Boston air. It clung to the manicured hedges of the Montgomery estate, a stark contrast to the bitterness coiling in her gut. She stood on the polished marble of the foyer, the grand entryway stretching like a gilded cage around her, every ornate detail screaming of a world she was not truly welcome in. Her skin, the color of rich earth, seemed to absorb all light in this pristine alabaster hall, making her feel like a shadow against a blinding canvas. Sarah, known for her resilient spirit and the warmth that radiated from her even in the chilliest winds of prejudice, felt a chill creep deeper than usual today. Her past, marked by quiet struggles and a fierce determination, had led her here, to the precipice of a life she fiercely loved, yet one that constantly reminded her of its precariousness. "Sarah, come in, dear." Mrs. Evelyn Montgomery's voice, a silk-clad whip, cut through the tension. It was less an invitation, more a command. Sarah's heart, usually a steady drum of hope, fluttered like a trapped bird. She knew this summons. It was an old, familiar dance, one she had performed countless times since Adam, her beloved, had first brought her into this opulent yet often suffocating world. But today the usual veiled disdain in Mrs. Montgomery's eyes seemed to burn brighter, almost triumphant. Sarah stepped into the cavernous study, the scent of old leather and wealth assaulting her senses. Bookshelves stretching to the vaulted ceiling stood like silent, disapproving sentinels. Mrs. Montgomery, draped in a silver-gray silk gown that seemed to absorb the very light, sat behind a large mahogany desk, her posture as rigid as the antique statues adorning the room. Her silver hair, meticulously coiffed, framed a face etched with the kind of disapproval that only generations of privilege could perfect. Beside her, though silent and seemingly weary, sat Mr. Montgomery, his presence a muted echo of his wife's commanding aura. He rarely intervened in his wife's family matters, preferring the distant hum of his financial empire. "Sarah," Mrs. Montgomery began, her voice devoid of warmth. "Your future." The word "your" hung in the air, weighted with unspoken accusations. Sarah's hands, clasped tightly in front of her, trembled, almost imperceptibly. She met Mrs. Montgomery's gaze, a quiet defiance burning in her brown eyes. She had faced countless stares, whispers, and outright rejections because of her skin color, her background, but Adam's love had always been her shield. Now, that shield felt thinner than ever. Sarah said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, "Adam loves me, Mrs. Montgomery, and I love him. We have a future, together." A dry, humorless chuckle escaped Mrs. Montgomery's lips. "Love, dear Sarah, is a fickle thing, and sometimes reality intrudes upon these youthful fantasies." She pushed a crisp, cream-colored envelope across the gleaming desk. Sarah's eyes widened slightly as she saw the insignia of the prestigious bank on the corner. Her gaze flickered back to Mrs. Montgomery, a cold dread seeping into her veins. "What is this, Mrs. Montgomery?" "It is a gesture of our goodwill, Sarah," Mrs. Montgomery purred, her eyes glittering with an icy resolve. "A generous sum, I assure you, enough to start fresh, far from here, enough to find someone more suitable." The implication hung heavy, in the air a poisonous cloud. "More suitable for someone like you." The words weren't spoken, but they resonated with a chilling clarity. It was a bribe, a blatant attempt to buy her out, to erase her from Adam's life, from their prestigious lineage. The sheer audacity of it, the cold, calculating nature of the offer, struck Sarah like a physical blow. The very air in the room seemed to thicken, heavy with the weight of generations of prejudice. Sarah felt a surge of indignation, hot and quick, rise within her. Her past, though humble, was built on integrity and hard work. This was an insult not just to her love for Adam, but to her very being, her dignity. The stark contrast between the glittering elegance of the room and the ugly transaction taking place within it was a bitter irony. She thought of Adam, his unwavering support, his passionate defense of her against his own family. He saw beyond the color of her skin, beyond the expectations of his social standing. He saw her. "I don't want your money, Mrs. Montgomery," Sarah said, her voice gaining strength, each word a defiance against the subtle tyranny of the woman before her. "My love for Adam is not for sale." She pushed the envelope back across the desk, her fingers brushing against the cool, impersonal paper. It felt like touching a viper. Mrs. Montgomery's carefully composed expression faltered for a fraction of a second, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "Don't be foolish, child," she snapped, her voice losing its sugary veneer. "This is for your own good. You cannot truly believe you belong here. Adam will eventually come to his senses. It's inevitable." Her words were laced with the venom Sarah had grown accustomed to, a stark reminder of the invisible barrier that always stood between her and this world. It was a barrier built of ancestral pride, wealth, and the cruelest of all, racial prejudice. Suddenly, the door creaked open and Adam stood there, his face pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. He had clearly heard fragments of the conversation. His presence, a beacon of warmth in Sarah's cold world, momentarily paralyzed Mrs. Montgomery. Adam's gaze, usually so vibrant, now held a bewildered pain as it darted from his mother to Sarah and then to the conspicuous envelope on the desk. "Mother? What is going on here?" Adam's voice, usually so melodic, was strained, filled with raw hurt that pierced Sarah's heart. He was an arrow caught between two opposing forces, his loyalty torn. The scene was a tableau of stark contrasts. Sarah, a quiet storm of dignity, Mrs. Montgomery, a frigid pillar of unyielding prejudice, and Adam caught in the devastating crossfire of a love that defied convention in a family bound by tradition. Before Mrs. Montgomery could compose herself, Adam walked over to Sarah, taking her hand gently. His touch was a lifeline, anchoring her in the turbulent waters. "Sarah is my fiancée, Mother. She is going to be my wife, and she belongs here, with me." His voice was firm, unwavering, a stark contrast to his earlier confusion. He looked at Sarah, his eyes radiating an unwavering love and defiance. In that moment, despite the bitter undertones, a powerful sense of unity solidified between them, a silent promise to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. Yet as the tension in the room thickened, a chilling premonition gnawed at Sarah. The Montgomery family, a towering oak of tradition and wealth, seemed determined to prune anything they considered an anomaly from their branches. The incident with the check, the raw hostility in Mrs. Montgomery's eyes, felt less like a skirmish and more like the opening salvo in a war for her place, her dignity, and her very right to love within these gilded walls. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that this was just the beginning. The road ahead, for her and Adam, would be fraught with more challenges, more unseen obstacles lurking beneath the glittering surface of their seemingly perfect world. The heavy silence that followed Adam's declaration was not of acceptance, but of a simmering, unspoken threat, a promise of battles yet to come. The honeyed scent of honeysuckle outside now seemed to mock her, a fragile sweetness clinging to the edge of an impending storm. The grand declaration Adam made that day in his mother's study, a defiant shield against a storm of prejudice, became the fragile foundation of Sarah's world. For a fleeting time, the biting coldness from Mrs. Montgomery softened into a frigid civility. Mr. Montgomery remained a distant, silent figure, his approval as elusive as a moonbeam. Sarah walked on eggshells in the sprawling mansion, each day a delicate dance between maintaining her dignity and trying to bridge the chasm that separated her from Adam's family. Adam, ever her steadfast champion, filled their shared spaces with laughter and unwavering affection, creating an oasis of warmth in the otherwise chilling atmosphere. They spent hours planning their future, their whispered dreams weaving a tapestry of hope. A cozy home filled with books and music, the joyful chaos of children's laughter, a life built on a love as deep and boundless as the ocean. Then the first crack appeared in their nascent happiness, a tremor that would soon become an earthquake. The news of David's death arrived like a predator in the night, tearing at the very fabric of the Montgomery family. David, the elder son, the valiant soldier, gone. His photograph, once a proud sentinel on the mantelpiece, became a stark monument to a life abruptly extinguished. Mrs. Montgomery, already a woman of brittle composure, shattered. Her elegant facade crumbled, revealing a raw, inconsolable grief that clawed at the air. Sarah, despite the lingering chill from Mrs. Montgomery, felt a genuine ache for her, for the unbearable weight of a mother's loss. She offered quiet support, a steady hand, a listening ear, becoming an anchor in the turbulent sea of the family's sorrow. Before the echoes of David's tragedy could fade, fate dealt another cruel blow. Adam, the son around whom Sarah's world revolved, was gone. The call from the hospital came at dawn, a harsh, impersonal voice delivering the news of a car accident, a fleeting hope that quickly turned to ash. He was gone before Sarah could even reach his bedside, before she could whisper one last "I love you," before she could touch his hand one last time. The world tilted on its axis. The vibrant colors of life bled into a monochrome of despair. The dreams they had woven, so vivid just days before, now lay shredded at her feet. Sarah moved through the days like a ghost, an echo in the silent halls of the Montgomery mansion. Her own grief was a suffocating shroud, a constant dull ache that throbbed beneath her ribs. But even in the depths of her personal agony, she saw the profound desolation that consumed the Montgomerys. Mrs. Montgomery, once so formidable, was now a fragile doll, her eyes hollow, her spirit broken. She retreated into a shell of grief, barely acknowledging the outside world. Emily and Olivia, the two younger sisters, wandered aimlessly, their innocent eyes brimming with tears, their smiles replaced by a constant tremor of sadness. The once bustling mansion had become a mausoleum, steeped in the bitter perfume of sorrow and unspoken despair. Sarah, despite the past hurts, felt an overwhelming surge of compassion. She had witnessed firsthand the devastating impact of Adam and David's absence. The family, particularly Mrs. Montgomery, seemed to be withering away, a proud lineage facing extinction. It was a stark, almost primal realization. The Montgomery name, the Montgomery legacy, hung by the thinnest of threads. And then a thought, both radical and profoundly personal, began to take root in the fertile ground of her grief. A seed planted long ago by Adam, nurtured by their shared dreams, began to sprout. She remembered their whispered conversations, their shared longing for children, for a family that would be an extension of their boundless love. She remembered the discreet visit to the fertility clinic, the hushed discussions with the doctor, the meticulous process of cryopreserving their embryos. It was a secret, a testament to a future they had so fervently believed in, a biological echo of their love stored away for a brighter tomorrow. Now, in this desolate present, that secret shimmered like a fragile beacon. A child, not just any child, but Adam's child. A piece of him, a living, breathing continuation of his spirit, his warmth, his laughter. A new life to breathe air into the suffocating silence, to rekindle a spark in Mrs. Montgomery's dimmed eyes, to give Emily and Olivia a reason to smile again. It was a desperate, almost audacious idea, born from profound grief and an even profounder love. It was also, she knew, fraught with unimaginable risks, especially given Mrs. Montgomery's deep-seated prejudices. Yet the thought persisted, gaining momentum with each passing day. It became her quiet mission, her clandestine hope, her ultimate act of love and defiance. It was a desperate gamble against the crushing weight of sorrow. Over the next few months, Sarah meticulously planned. She found a fertility clinic far from Boston, shrouded in discretion, where no questions would be asked about her unusual circumstances. The process was lonely, marked by hushed consultations and the sterile chill of medical instruments. They were moments of profound doubt, whispers in her own mind asking if this was truly right, if she was overstepping boundaries, if she was merely clinging to a ghost. But then she would think of Adam, of his vibrant smile, his unwavering belief in our future, and the image of Noah, a tiny, imagined face, would solidify in her mind, banishing the doubts. This wasn't about defiance, it was about legacy. It was about hope. It was about love. 2 years after Adam's death, as the world moved on and the Montgomery family remained trapped in their mournful stasis, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Noah, a name meaning rest or comfort, a silent prayer for the peace he might bring. His birth was a solitary joy, a quiet miracle witnessed only by a handful of medical professionals. Holding him for the first time, seeing Adam's eyes, Adam's tiny fingers, filled her with a love so fierce it almost shattered her. He was a piece of Adam, tangible and real, a sunflower blooming defiantly in the winter of her grief. Bringing Noah home was like dropping a stone into still, frozen water. The ripple effect was immediate and devastating. Mrs. Montgomery, who had become a shadow of her former self, emerged from her grief-stricken haze, her eyes narrowing as she saw the baby. There was no joy, no curiosity, only suspicion, burning with the familiar fire of prejudice. "Whose child is this, Sarah?" Mrs. Montgomery's voice, though weak, carried an unmistakable accusation. The words hung heavy in the air, a poisoned arrow. Sarah, cradling Noah tightly, felt her heart pound. This was it, the moment of truth. "He's Adam's. He's our son. We had embryos stored before Adam passed." But Mrs. Montgomery's face hardened, her lips, thin and pale, pressed into a tight line. "Lies, such blatant lies. How dare you, Sarah? How dare you bring this shame into my house? After everything, you betray us like this?" Her voice rose, shrill with disbelief and fury. "You think I am a fool to believe such a preposterous story? A child, 2 years after my son's death, and from you, a woman of your kind?" The racial slur, thinly veiled but unmistakable, was a cruel, familiar knife twisting in the wound of Sarah's grief. Mr. Montgomery, usually so detached, shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting between his wife's enraged face and Sarah's tear-filled eyes. He didn't utter a word, but his silence was deafening, a tacit agreement with his wife's accusations. The unspoken message was clear. They chose to believe the worst, to let their prejudices blind them to the miraculous truth. "Mother, please," Emily cried out, her young face streaked with tears, rushing to Sarah's side. "Noah is so tiny. He looks like Adam." But her innocent words were drowned out by Mrs. Montgomery's escalating outrage.
"Get out. Get out of my house. Take that child with you. You have soiled everything." Mrs. Montgomery's voice reached a crescendo, echoing through the once silent halls. Her face was contorted with a mixture of grief, anger, and ingrained bias, a terrifying mask of fury. Sarah, clutching Noah tighter, felt a crushing wave of despair. The house that had been Adam's refuge, her sanctuary, now felt like a prison, its walls closing in. The very air seemed to vibrate with their condemnation. She had sought to bring light, to offer hope, and in return she was met with accusations and banishment. The injustice of it all, the sheer blindness fueled by prejudice, was a bitter, unbearable pill. As she stood there, the weight of their judgment pressing down on her, the quiet hope that had propelled her through the dark days seemed to flicker, threatening to extinguish completely. Noah, innocent and unaware, stirred in her arms, a tiny, living testament to a love they refused to see, a truth they were too prejudiced to accept. The chasm between Sarah and the Montgomery family had not been bridged. It had widened into an abyss,
and at its edge, Sarah stood alone, clutching her miracle.
The words struck Sarah like a physical blow. David, Adam's brother, the one presumed dead in the unforgiving sands of Afghanistan, the one whose sacrifice had deepened the family's grief, paving the way for Adam's reckless despair. Now he was back, a ghost from the past stepping into a present he knew nothing about. The news hung in the air, a surreal, almost unbelievable truth. Days later, David arrived. He walked into the Montgomery mansion not with the confident stride of a returning war hero, but with a tentative, almost fragile gait. His eyes, though retaining a flicker of the Montgomery piercing blue, held a haunted, far-away look, a testament to the horrors he had witnessed and the memories he had lost. His body bore the scars of war, a slight limp, a stiffness in his left arm, but it was his mind that carried the deeper wounds. He remembered fragments, faces, but the last few years, including the death of Adam and the identity of Sarah, were a gaping void. The family rallied around him, a flurry of relieved tears and hushed explanations. Mrs. Montgomery, for the first time in years, showed a flicker of her old vitality, tending to David with a fierce, possessive love. It was during these explanations that David learned about Adam's death, about the grief that had consumed his family, and then about Sarah and Noah. He observed Sarah from a distance, a curious, almost wary gaze. He saw the quiet strength in her eyes, the gentle way she held Noah, the effortless tenderness with which she cared for his mother, who, despite her harshness, clung to Sarah's presence like a shipwrecked survivor to a last piece of driftwood. He heard his mother's scathing accusations against Sarah, the unsubstantiated claims about Noah's parentage, but something in Sarah's quiet dignity, in the sheer disbelief in her eyes as Mrs. Montgomery spoke, resonated with him. The narrative his mother presented felt incomplete. It lacked the genuine sorrow he saw etched on Sarah's face when she thought no one was looking, the way her eyes would follow Mrs. Montgomery, a complex mix of duty and sorrow. One afternoon, David approached Sarah as she sat in the sun-drenched conservatory, Noah sleeping peacefully in her arms. The soft light softened the sharp angles of the room, painting a temporary truce in the war of emotions that raged within its walls. "Sarah," David's voice was low, thoughtful. "My mother, she has told me a lot. About Adam, about Noah." Sarah tensed, bracing herself for the inevitable accusations. "I understand if you have doubts, David," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I can explain. Noah is Adam's son. We had embryos stored." David nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on Noah's sleeping face. "I understand the story, Sarah, but there's a missing piece. My mother's conviction is absolute, and yet I see Adam's eyes in him. It's uncanny." He paused, his gaze meeting hers, a flicker of something akin to empathy in their depths. "I need to know the truth, Sarah. Not just for our family's peace, but for Noah. He deserves to know who he is." Sarah's heart ached with a sudden, unexpected hope. Finally, someone willing to listen, to truly see beyond the veil of prejudice. "I understand, David," she said, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "I want nothing more than for Noah to know his truth." David proposed a DNA test. It was a radical idea, a scientific truth to cut through the thick fog of suspicion and accusation. Mrs. Montgomery initially scoffed, dismissing it as an unnecessary indulgence. "There's no need for such theatricals. The truth is obvious," she declared, her voice laced with disdain. But David, with a newfound resolute that surprised even himself, stood firm. "Mother, for the sake of our family, for Noah's future, we need this clarity. We need to be certain." Mr. Montgomery, perhaps seeing a flicker of his old, decisive self in David, quietly supported the idea.
The days that followed were a crucible of agonizing suspense. Sarah waited,
each tick of the clock amplifying her anxiety. The very air in the mansion felt charged, thick with unspoken anticipation. Emily and Olivia, sensing the gravity of the situation, clung to Sarah and Noah, their innocent faith a fragile shield against the storm. Sarah often found herself holding Noah close, whispering promises of a world where his identity would be clear, where he would be loved without question. Then the envelope arrived. A plain, official-looking document, yet it held the power to shatter or heal. David, with a quiet solemnity, gathered the family in the drawing room. Mrs. Montgomery sat stiffly, her face a mask of determined disbelief, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Mr. Montgomery stood by the fireplace, his gaze fixed on the flickering flames. Sarah, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, held Noah tightly, seeking solace in his innocent warmth. David's voice was steady, though a tremor of emotion ran beneath it, as he read the words aloud. The scientific jargon faded into the undeniable conclusion. The DNA analysis confirms with 99.9% certainty that Noah Montgomery is the biological son of Adam Montgomery. The words hung in the air, a reverberating echo of truth. Mrs. Montgomery gasped, a strangled sound that was half disbelief, half horror. Her face, which had been set in a rigid mask of denial, crumbled. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving them ashen. Her hands, which had been so tightly clasped, flew to her mouth, stifling a cry. Mr. Montgomery, who had been staring at the fireplace, slowly turned, his eyes wide with the mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. A profound silence descended upon the room, broken only by Noah's soft gurgle. Sarah, tears blurring her vision, looked at Noah, then at the stunned faces of the Montgomerys. The truth, so long dismissed, so vehemently denied, now stood undeniable, stark in its scientific certainty. The prejudice that had blinded them, the accusations that had wounded her so deeply, were now exposed as cruel, baseless lies. The air once thick with suspicion was now heavy with the weight of revelation and a profound, agonizing regret. It was the truth that would change everything, a truth that would force them all to confront the shadows of their own hearts.
The DNA results had fallen like an axe, cleaving through the thick layers of denial and prejudice that had encased the Montgomery family. The drawing room, once a stage for polite disdain, was now a tableau of raw, exposed emotion. Mrs. Montgomery, her face a crumpled map of remorse, seemed to shrink before Sarah's eyes. The formidable matriarch, once so unyielding, was now a shell, her proud posture utterly broken. Her silence, previously a weapon, became a heavy, tangible burden of regret. Mr. Montgomery, too, seemed to age years in mere moments, his distant gaze replaced by a somber awareness, a profound understanding of the injustice Sarah had endured. The air, once thick with accusations, now vibrated with the unspoken weight of their collective shame. Sarah, however, felt no immediate triumph. The revelation was not a victory, but a bittersweet vindication. Her tears, no longer born of sorrow or despair, were now the quiet overflow of years of suppressed pain, a release of the burden she had carried alone. She looked at Noah, sleeping peacefully in her arms, utterly oblivious to the tempest his very existence had unleashed. He was her beacon, her silent testament, and the reason she had endured. The scientific confirmation simply confirmed what her heart and Adam's love had always known. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the Montgomery mansion shifted dramatically. The icy aloofness melted, replaced by an awkward, hesitant warmth. Mrs. Montgomery, humbled and visibly shaken, made clumsy attempts at apology.
Her words, though stilted and unfamiliar on her tongue, carried a genuine remorse that Sarah had never thought to witness. She found Mrs. Montgomery sometimes watching Noah from afar, a strange mixture of awe and sorrow in her eyes, as if seeing Adam's ghost in the child's innocent face. Mr. Montgomery, too, shed his usual reserve, engaging Sarah in polite, almost tentative conversations about Noah, a quiet acknowledgement of her rightful place. Emily and Olivia, freed from the suffocating cloud of their grandmother's disapproval, showered Sarah and Noah with unrestrained affection, their joy a healing balm on Sarah's wounded spirit. But it was David who bore the heaviest weight of the revelation. The scientific proof, while validating Sarah, had simultaneously landed a crushing blow to his own fragile sense of self. He had returned a hero, a survivor, but now he was confronted with the stark reality of his family's prejudice and the profound injustice dealt to Sarah. He saw the quiet dignity with which Sarah had endured years of scorn, the selfless love with which she had cared for his grieving mother and nurtured his sisters, all while carrying Adam's secret and raising Adam's child under a cloud of baseless accusations. He saw the strength in her quiet eyes, the unwavering resilience in her spirit. A profound sense of responsibility settled upon David. It wasn't just about validating Sarah's truth, it was about atoning for his family's blindness, for the suffering they had inflicted on the woman Adam loved. He wrestled with his thoughts late into the nights, pacing the vast, empty corridors of the mansion. The weight of his brother's memory pressed down on him. Adam, his adventurous, carefree younger brother, whose life had been cut so tragically short. David felt a surge of loyalty to Adam, a fierce desire to honor his memory. But how? By merely accepting Sarah and Noah? Or by doing something more profound? Something that could truly mend the gaping wounds in their family and right the wrongs committed against the woman Adam loved? The idea, when it first flickered into his mind, felt like a betrayal. Marriage. To Sarah. Adam's Sarah. The thought was a raw, visceral ache in his chest, tangled with guilt and a burgeoning, unexpected admiration. He replayed conversations with Adam, Adam's passionate defenses of Sarah, his fierce love for her. Would Adam want this? Would he approve of his brother stepping into such a role? David battled with the ghost of his brother, questioning his own motives. Was it pity? Duty? Or something else? Something deeper, stirring within him?
He saw how Noah, with Adam's bright, curious eyes, would reach for Sarah, how her face would soften into an ethereal beauty when she looked at her son. He watched her interact with his mother, offering a gentle hand, a soft word, even after all the pain. He witnessed her boundless patience with Emily and Olivia, teaching them, laughing with them, filling the house with a light that had been absent for too long. Sarah was not just Adam's love. She was the quiet strength that had held his broken family together. And Noah, the living embodiment of Adam, deserved a stable, recognized family. David's military training had instilled in him a powerful sense of duty and protection. He saw Sarah and Noah as needing that protection now, more than ever. The internal conflict raged within him. He spent hours in the old study, staring at Adam's photograph, seeking a sign, an answer. The face in the picture, forever young and vibrant, offered no clear guidance, only a poignant reminder of what was lost. But as he looked at Adam's joyful eyes, a different thought emerged. Adam wouldn't want Sarah to suffer. Adam would want Noah to be safe, loved, and acknowledged. And perhaps by stepping into this role, David could ensure that. It was a promise to his lost brother, a silent vow to protect the legacy Adam had unknowingly left behind. Finally, one quiet afternoon, David sought Sarah out. She was in the garden, tending to a wilting sunflower, its head bowed in a posture of resignation. The contrast was stark. Sarah, the embodiment of life and nurturing, trying to revive a dying symbol of the very name she was living under. Sarah, David began, his voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in his hands. He knelt beside her, a gesture of profound respect. I have been doing a lot of thinking about everything, about Adam, about Noah, about our family. He paused, gathering his courage, the sunlight glinting off the faded scars on his face. What my family did to you, what my mother said, it was unforgivable. I am deeply, truly sorry for the pain we've caused you. His sincerity hung in the air, raw and unguarded. Sarah looked up, her eyes wide, surprised by the intensity of his apology. David, you don't have to. Yes, I do, he interrupted, his voice firm. I do. And I want to make it right. Not just for you, but for Adam, for Noah, for our family's future. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't just an apology. He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant sapphire ring reminiscent of Adam's eyes. Sarah, he said, his gaze unwavering. I know this isn't how things were meant to be. I know I'm not Adam, and I know you loved him fiercely. But I want to ask you to marry me. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The wilting sunflower seemed to lean towards them, a silent witness to this unexpected proposal. David continued, his voice filled with a quiet conviction. This isn't about replacing Adam. No one ever could. This is about honoring him. It's about protecting Noah, giving him the name he deserves, giving him a father figure, a stable home. It's about trying to heal this family. And it's about you, Sarah. You have shown us a strength, a goodness, a boundless capacity for love that this family desperately needs. You are the light that has kept us from shattering completely. He looked at her, his eyes pleading for understanding. I know it's a lot to ask. I know you may still be grieving Adam, and I understand if you can't accept, but I promise you, Sarah, I will honor your past, I will cherish Noah, and I will do everything in my power to make you happy, to give you the life and respect you deserve. As a true Montgomery.
The weight of his words settled on Sarah, heavy with unspoken emotions. Marriage to David. The thought was bewildering, a collision of past and present, love and loss. Her mind raced. On one hand, it offered Noah a secure future, a name, a family that now, finally, accepted him. It offered her a form of protection, an end to the endless battles for acceptance. On the other hand, it felt like a monumental leap into the unknown, a step that might, in some ways, feel like a betrayal of Adam's memory. Could she truly enter into a marriage that wasn't born of the same passionate love she shared with Adam? Could she ever truly open her heart to another Montgomery, even one as remorseful and earnest as David? The question hung in the air, a silent plea from David, and a daunting challenge for Sarah's wounded, complicated heart. The wilting sunflower seemed to sway, mirroring the tumultuous storm raging within her. Sarah's silence stretched, a fragile bridge across the chasm of their shared path. David knelt before her, the sapphire ring a glittering promise, his gaze a potent mixture of hope and vulnerability. The wilting sunflower, a silent companion, seemed to hold its breath. Her heart was a battleground, where the ghost of Adam's love wrestled with the undeniable reality of David's earnest proposal. Should she, build a future on the ashes of her past, especially with his brother? The question echoed in the quiet garden, a melody both sweet and melancholy. She thought of Noah, his innocent eyes mirroring Adam's. He was the sun, the reason for every breath, A marriage to David meant stability, acceptance, a home where Noah would never question his identity. It meant a father figure, a name that was unequivocally Montgomery. But it also meant stepping into a role that felt both sacred and profoundly challenging. Could she open her heart again, even a crack, to another Montgomery? To the brother of the man whose love still resonated in every fiber of her being? The thought felt like a betrayal to Adam, a dilution of their profound connection. Yet the desperate desire for Noah's security, for his undeniable place in this world, tugged at her, a powerful current pulling her forward. Sarah lifted her gaze to meet David's. His eyes, though similar to Adam's, held a different kind of intensity, a quiet strength forged in the crucible of war, a deep regret for his family's past actions, and a newfound respect for her. She saw not just a man offering a hand in marriage, but a soul seeking redemption, a brother trying to honor a lost legacy. The raw sincerity in his eyes was a testament to his transformation.
This offer from David, though born of a different kind of love, was also an offering of peace, of a legitimate place within the family that had once scorned her. It was a chance for Noah to grow up free from the shadows of doubt and prejudice. One morning, as the sun, much like a sunflower, turned its face towards the warmth, Sarah made her decision. She found David in the study, poring over old family albums. He looked up, his expression guarded, anticipating her answer. "David," she said, her voice clear and steady, "I will marry you." A wave of relief washed over his face, quickly followed by a profound solemnity. He rose, walking towards her. "Thank you, Sarah," he said, his voice husky with emotion. I promise you, you won't regret this." He didn't try to embrace her, respecting the subtle distance that still existed, a silent acknowledgement of the delicate nature of their agreement. It was a partnership, built on a shared future, not yet on shared passion. Their wedding was a quiet affair, a stark contrast to the grand Montgomery affairs of the past. It was held in the family's small, sunlit chapel on the estate, witnessed only by Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery, Emily, Olivia, and a few close family friends. Mrs. Montgomery, her eyes still holding a hint of remorse, gave Sarah a hesitant, almost fragile smile. She had shed her rigid facade, replaced by a quiet vulnerability, a slow dawning of understanding. She saw not just a bride, but the woman who had brought light back into her desolate home, the woman who had given her a grandson. The very air in the chapel, once filled with solemnity, now hummed with a quiet, burgeoning hope. Life in the Montgomery mansion began to transform, slowly, subtly, like the gradual blooming of a flower.
David proved to be a man of his word. He treated Sarah with unwavering respect, his actions speaking louder than any declarations of love. He was patient, understanding, and fiercely protective of Noah. He would spend hours with the boy, teaching him to skip stones by the pond, reading him stories with a gentle voice that resonated with a newfound tenderness. He was not Adam, but he was a steady, loving presence, a rock Sarah could lean on. Mrs. Montgomery, profoundly affected by the DNA revelation and Sarah's unwavering grace, underwent a remarkable metamorphosis. The icy matriarch melted, replaced by a grandmother whose heart had been irrevocably touched by Noah. She would dote on him, her aristocratic features softening into gentle smiles as he chased butterflies in the garden. Her apologies to Sarah, initially stiff and formal, became more frequent, more heartfelt, until one day she simply held Sarah's hand, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "Thank you, Sarah, for everything, for staying, for giving us Noah, for forgiving me." It was a moment of profound healing, a quiet absolution that washed away years of bitterness. The once unbridgeable chasm of prejudice had been spanned not by grand gestures, but by the undeniable truth of a child's existence and a woman's enduring kindness.
One crisp autumn afternoon, Sarah stood in the garden, watching Noah chase fallen leaves, his laughter echoing through the air. David came up behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her waist. He kissed her temple, a tender, unspoken gesture of affection. "He's truly a gift, isn't he?" David murmured, his voice filled with an almost reverent awe. Sarah leaned into him, a soft smile gracing her lips. "He is," she agreed, her gaze fixed on Noah. Then she looked up at David, her eyes filled with a peace she hadn't thought possible. "Thank you, David," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything." Their story was not a fairy tale ending, but a testament to the resilience of the human heart, the power of forgiveness, and the transformative nature of love in its many forms. Sarah, the sunflower, had found her son, not in the fiery brilliance of Adam, but in the steady, enduring warmth of David and the vibrant, undeniable light of Noah. Their tears had watered the barren ground of sorrow, allowing new life and a deeper, more profound happiness to finally bloom. The echoes of prejudice faded, replaced by the symphony of a family truly united, bound not by bloodline alone, but by a love that had weathered the storm and emerged stronger and more beautiful than ever. Dear listeners, thank you for joining us on this emotional journey through sunflower tears. This story reminds us of the enduring power of love, the corrosive nature of prejudice, and the incredible strength found in forgiveness and acceptance. It teaches us that true family is forged not just by blood, but by shared trials, unwavering kindness, and the courage to embrace truth. Please share your thoughts and lessons learned in the comments below. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with those you cherish. Thank you.